Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and it's the first full week of college football, and we will definitely get you caught up, informed, and prepared for this upcoming week's action. We have an action-packed show lined up for you guys this week, and here's what we have on tap. The MEAC and SWAC champions end their season with a berth in the Celebration Bowl, which was a huge success last season, and we'll talk with the executive director of the Celebration Bowl, John T. Grant, later on in this show. Last episode, we unveiled our preseason top 25, and this week, we'll give our preseason FCS playoff predictions, which again, I'm sure we'll receive nothing but rosy compliments on. And we'll dive into the previews of the 12 big games on the schedule this week, as we already have some great matchups. But now it's time to go into our 4-minute offense and take a look at some of the top storylines heading into this week. 16 new coaches in the FCS in 2016, 3 in both the Missouri Valley Conference and the Ohio Valley Conference. The most intriguing hire is Bob Nilsson of South Dakota, who left Western Illinois to go and coach the Coyotes, which will make it a must-see game on October 29th as he faces his old team. The Buck Buchanan Award is annually given to the top defensive player in the FCS. Last year, Norfolk State's linebacker Deion King, who's now with the Dallas Cowboys, led both the FBS and FCS in total tackles, won the award. Now, here are some of the guys that we think have a great chance to win it this season. Defensive end Keonta Davis of Chattanooga was 6th in the country last year with 13.5 sacks and should be in a position to get even more sacks this year. Defensive tackle Carter Schultz of Northern Iowa was right behind Davis in sacks, but what's outstanding about his sack total, which was 14, is that he comes from the interior as a defensive tackle, and he's also very stout versus the run. Linebacker Dylan Cole of Missouri State is a tackling machine. He's also on the Senior Bowl watch list. The 6', 236-pound senior backer finished 2015 with 153 total tackles. 73 of them were solo stops. He, along with the other backers in Alabama State's Courtney Berry, Jackson State's Javancy Jones, and Duquesne's Kristen Kuntz, should all have their say and make a case for the Buchanan. You can also toss in North Dakota State's linebacker Nick DeLuca. 2 defensive backs to watch are Casey DeAndre of New Hampshire and Donald Payne of Stetson. Both guys are 2-time All-Americans that are very active on both ends of defense. And as you know, early in the season, there's going to be a lot of exciting crossover games between conferences, but also between subdivisions as well. Some are more intriguing than others, but these 8 games I think will have the potential to be a lot closer than many would expect. That Fordham-Navy game should see a lot of points scored and will probably end up being the most entertaining watch of this week. Eastern Washington and Washington State will feature 2 talented passers in the Eagles' Jordan West and the Cougars' Luke Falk. That one should be another game that could break the scoreboard. And finally, the 2016 season marks the swan song in the FCS for Coastal Carolina, as the Chanticleers will be moving on to the Sun Belt Conference next season. Now, the Chanticleers are not eligible for postseason play as they are making this transition, but don't sleep on the talent that they have on the roster, and they still could finish with at least 8 wins this year. Coastal opens up their season in Beaumont, Texas, as they take on the Lamar Cardinals. We'll be back after this commercial break.
I think FCS presents such a great opportunity, at a school like Fordham and the rest of the Patriot League schools to get the best of both worlds. You're talking about, some of the top 60 academic institutions in the country. Combine that with, full scholarship Division I football that's able to compete on a national level. I think, from a recruiting standpoint and talking to other coaches, that's what we're identifying. We're identifying guys that academics and football are equally important. Not one more than the other, but truly equally important. I think that's the strength of FCS football, certainly in the Patriot League.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show, to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at gocsb.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Last year, the inaugural Celebration Bowl was a huge success. North Carolina A&T and Alcorn State kicked off the 2015 bowl season in front of over 35,000 fans in the Georgia Dome and in front of a national audience as the game was aired on ABC. Now, recently I was at the MEAC Media Day and spoke with the executive director of the Celebration Bowl, John T. Grant, and he spoke about last year's success and what we can expect for the second installment. Welcome to FootballGamePlan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, here with John Grant, Executive Director of the Celebration Bowl. I thank you for taking time today and talking with us about the bowl game.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, I was at last year's inaugural matchup down in Atlanta. Great way to kick off a bowl in bowl season. What new changes can we expect for the Celebration Bowl this year?
Well, we were excited about the results that we received last year. Great ratings, a lot of one in terms of our viewership, an excellent football game between the champions of both conferences. I mean, both teams left everything they had on the field, and we could not have expected anything less from them, and certainly they delivered a great show to the people in attendance and the audiences that watched. This year we're adding a few little things because this year ESPN has launched a new site called The Undefeated.
Okay.
And The Undefeated focuses on 4 verticals: sports, culture and the uplift, which are positive stories, and race. And one of them is the verticals is HBCUs. So we're using that platform to really hype up, the stories and content that are around our historically black colleges and universities and the great stories that they have to tell. And the second thing that we're doing is we're taking the Air Force Reserve Trophy on tour.
Nice.
It's an 11-stop tour that launched in January the 25th in Atlanta, and will be the next stop will be at the MEAC SWAC Challenge September 4th in Daytona Beach. We'll be going to Howard's Homecoming on October the 22nd, where they're playing North Carolina A&T. We'll also be coming back down to North Carolina A&T's homecoming. We'll be attending the Jackson State Southern game in Jackson, Mississippi, which is always a big game on the SWAC side. And then we'll be at the Florida Classic. We'll be at the Magic City Classic, and we'll also be at the SWAC Championship and the trophy will then come back to Atlanta. It's just like an Olympic tour. It'll come back to Atlanta in December in time for the Air Force Reserve Celebration Bowl.
Now, what's interesting about the game is that it involves the MEAC and the SWAC, and it's funny that it's called the Celebration Bowl because every time these two conferences get together, it is a celebration. So how important, just for the MEAC sake, because we're here at Media Day, how important was it to get the MEAC involved in this bowl game?
Well, it was extremely important. I mean, the Mid-East Athletic Conference and the Southwest Athletic Conference are the two Division I conferences for HBCUs. And so having them involved gave us the platform for the two major conferences as it relates to historically black colleges and universities at the Division I level. The MEAC has been a tremendous partner. We congratulate them for being the inaugural champion. They got away with just by the skin of their teeth because Alcorn couldn't get the ball in, with time running out on the clock. But that's the kind of game we expect. But I know that coming back next year, it's going to be, again, whoever represents each conference will play hard because they want to take home the trophy and to be labeled national champion.
Now, what about the significance of this game? Because a lot of times there's a bunch of great classics. I grew up in New Orleans, so I know about the Bayou Classic, and I know about the Florida Classic because of the history and the MEAC SWAC Challenge. But how important was it to get this game, or how significant can this game be for the HBCU football landscape moving forward?
Well, there is a difference. I mean, but certainly classics are lexicons in the HBCU lore. But having a championship bowl game takes it all to another level.
Right.
I mean, and the opportunity to play before a national audience on a national network, the opportunity to give the players a bowl-like experience over several days, the opportunity to give fans the feel of being at a championship game, and the opportunity to give the nation a chance to see, what our historically black colleges and universities do both on the field and off the field, and how important they are in creating the human capital that builds our country.
Now, I was at the last game. I was excited. As an analyst, you have to not be biased. But I was just amped up because of how great of a game it was. So biases went out the window. But I'm looking forward to another big game, another exciting event. But where can people find this game, and when can they tune in?
Well, the game will be aired again on ABC December the 17th at 12 noon. And so we're telling people, look, you need to be there. If you can't be there, watch. And if you can't watch, turn your television on and go about your business. And if you can be there, time your television to come on while you're at the game, so we get the ratings and we get your presence. But in all seriousness, the importance of this game to these conferences, to these universities, and to these players can't be understated. But more importantly, it is an opportunity also, as I mentioned earlier, to give the rest of the country to see this talent and understand the value that HBCUs serve in a diverse country. We have to have diverse platforms to educate people, and historically black colleges and universities serve a critical role in doing that, building the fabric of our nation through developing human capital.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the game this year, and we wish you the best of luck building this game. And check these guys out December 17th on ABC.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
The Connecticut School of Broadcasting can help you reach the next level in the amazing world of broadcast and entertainment media.
I've mentored several interns here at the Covino and Rich Show at Sirius XM, and the ones from CSB always stand out to me. They have a knowledge of the equipment, knowledge of editing, what it's like to be in a studio, and that always eliminates a huge learning curve.
Their professional studios give students a hands-on, learn-by-doing approach using equipment used in actual radio stations and TV studios. Visit our website at gocsb.com or call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Start today.
This is a rivalry that dates back to 1891 between two schools separated by only 37.5 miles. It's Colgate versus Syracuse, the Raiders versus the Orange. They played virtually every year from 1891 to 1960 before the series went dormant for 20 years, coming back in 1981, only to go back dormant again in 1987. Now the two schools agreed to meet each other on the gridiron back in 2010, a game in which Syracuse won 42-7. Now this game has produced some classics. In 1916, Colgate defeats the Orange 15-0 en route to their first national title, and the same in 1932, this time 16-0 as they went on to win their second national championship. The 1950 Syracuse squads featured two legends in running back Jim Brown and Heisman Trophy winner Ernie Davis. In 1956, Brown scored 43 of Syracuse's 61 points in a victory, while in 1959, the Davis-led Orange blew out Colgate 71-0 en route to their only national championship. Colgate's last victory in the series came in 1950, and the Raiders lead the overall series 31-30-5, which makes this meeting between the two schools on Friday night in the Carrier Dome even more meaningful. I'm Emery Hunt for this week's edition of Tradition, and we'll be back after this. Don't forget to check out and grab your copy of our two newly released books, Football: A Love Story and What Did Football Teach Me? These books feature over 100 stories from current and former coaches, players, executives, and entertainers from across the football landscape, describing what got them involved in the game, what they love about it, and what life lessons the game taught them. You can find your copy or order your copy from our website at footballgameplan.com/books.
No, I think the FCS is really, when you look at it, it's the perfect model for football. Okay, in that as a coach, number one, you deal with Division I, it's great. You deal with a high level of athlete. In our case, you deal with a high level of student. It's extremely competitive football. It's a great environment, but it's also doesn't have some of the trappings that the bigger levels have as far as the business and the money of things. But it's pure football. And as a coach, that's what I like is it's about the football. And I think the way we determine our champion is the best playoff system in all of sports. And I think that you can never argue with who the national champion is at the FCS level. And it's just top to bottom the most competitive bracket of playoff sports there is in any of the sports. So if you like the action, I think the quality of play is extremely high. I think the quality of person is extremely high. I think there's some great coaches at our level, and it's attainable to fans too. It's also you come to an FCS game, you have a little bit more of a close experience to the players. And in our case, the players meet the people in the town. It's right there. They're not kind of like these pros in waiting. You can reach out, you can touch them, you can meet the coaches, you can do that stuff. It's just enjoyable football at a real high level still.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Last episode, we released our 2016 preseason top 25, and if you followed us all summer, you've seen our preseason conference previews as well. So with that said, let's just sim straight through the regular season and project the teams that we think will make the field of 24 in the FCS playoffs. So let's start with our projected top 8 seeds in the playoffs: North Dakota State, Chattanooga, Sam Houston State, Richmond, Jacksonville State, Colgate, North Dakota, and Charleston Southern respectively. These are all teams that we predict will win their conference, and there's potential for some great matchups in the quarterfinals or Final 8, however you want to call it, with the way this bracket shakes out. A possible rematch of North Dakota State and Charleston Southern, a rematch of last year's playoff tilt between Sam Houston State and Colgate, two explosive offenses, in Richmond and Jacksonville State, along with good physical defensive play between Chattanooga and North Dakota. And as we move on to the rest of the projected field, you'll see two conference winners face off in the first round in Dayton and Sacred Heart. The rest are at large bids, and the CAA leads the way with 4, while both the Missouri Valley Football Conference and Big Sky Conference gets 3 into the playoffs. Also have 2 SoCon at-large teams, which will surprise some, but I truly think both Mercer and the Citadel will be very good this year and tough to keep out the playoffs. And there's always teams that have the potential to crash the playoff party. The Monmouth Hawks are one of those teams. They are built well on both sides of the ball and have an excellent running game and great tight end play. They'll give Charleston Southern a run for their money in the Big South. Sanford played a lot of freshmen last year, especially on offense. They are now experienced and pose a serious threat in the SoCon. You just hope defensively that they're able to find some level of consistency. And I'm high on the potential of the Lamar Cardinals. Running back Cade Harrington and defensive end Lawrence Hale are premier talents on what could be the best team talent-wise in Beaumont since rebooting their program. The Patriot League will be strong once again, as both Holy Cross and Bucknell are teams to watch. Holy Cross, led by quarterback Peter Pujols, and a veteran offensive line, is looking to build on last year's success, while Bucknell does a great job of controlling both sides of the line of scrimmage and got back running back C.J. Williams from injury, and their defense may be the best in the FCS. The NEC will come down to 2 teams, in my opinion, Sacred Heart and St. Francis, which means both teams are really good. And the Red Flash has All-American defensive back and returner Lorenzo Jerome, who's a game breaker and a game changer. Their October 29th matchup versus Sacred Heart will be huge. Illinois State is definitely one to keep an eye on during the season. All-American Anthony Warren, the wide receiver, is outstanding, and they still should be solid up front offensively. If they can overcome the losses of quarterback Trey Roberson, running back Marshawn Coperidge, and a host of defenders, they'll be in play for an at-large bid this season. 2 other CAA squads to keep an eye on are Stony Brook and Villanova. With Stony Brook, it'll all come down to quarterback play because they are extremely talented everywhere else on their roster. For the Wildcats, seeing that its head coach Andy Talley's last season at Villanova, we're probably going to see the most inspired team in the FCS, which could easily translate to a magical season. I think Eastern Kentucky can be this year's Western Illinois, where they'll fly underneath the radar all season long, but at the end of the regular season, we'll see a team that has quietly put together a very strong resume. And the Montana Grizzlies are always in the mix, and I'm interested to see how good they can be defensively, which will ultimately determine if they're able to secure an at-large bid. And heck, why not? Just for the sake of it, I'll throw in some off-the-wall picks. The Ivy League, MEAC, and SWAC don't have automatic bids but are still in play for at-large bids despite the actual chances of accepting in the case of the Ivy League or getting selected. However, let's just say for whatever reasons the Ivy League, MEAC, and SWAC decided to join the playoff party, the Penn Quakers, with their high-powered offensive attack led by quarterback Alec Torgerson and wide receiver Justin Watson, would represent the Ancient Eight very well. In the MEAC, I think both Bethune-Cookman and North Carolina Central will have strong resumes, and teams for that matter, to make the NCAA selection committee think long and hard about offering up an at-large bid this season. The SWAC, in my opinion, has 3 strong teams: Alabama State, Grambling, and Prairie View A&M. I think the Hornets will win the title, but whichever out of Grambling or Prairie View doesn't make it to the SWAC title game will more than likely be sitting there with 8 or 9 Division I wins and definitely worthy of an at-large bid. We'll be back after this quick commercial break.
New York City, the media capital of the world. But in America, there is a world of media at our fingertips, from coast to coast. The broadcast media industry connects us in so many ways and remains on the cutting edge of providing us news and entertainment. Have you ever pictured yourself working in the media? Did you ever dream of working in TV or on the radio? Make your dreams come true today. Connecticut School of Broadcasting is the oldest and largest group of communication schools in the country. At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll learn by doing with hands-on training straight from professional broadcasters. There is job placement assistance for graduates, day and evening courses available. Graduate and get into the job market in only 8 or 16 weeks. Don't waste another second daydreaming about what you want to do with your life. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO and start living your dream today.
It's never too early to talk NFL draft, and every week of the season on the FCS Kickoff, we'll take a look at some of the draft prospects that you want to watch for that particular week and the matchups that they will face. Now, here's our 5th down draft outlook for week 1. The first prospect we'll take a look at is Tana Passanio, defensive end at Villanova. 2 years ago, I was tipped off by a Wildcats assistant coach to keep an eye out for Passanio as he got older, and boy was he right. The first thing that jumps out at you is how strong he is at the point of attack. At 6'7", 290 pounds, Passanio plays with great length, and I think he's more of a power rusher that can look to add weight. I think he can get up to 300 pounds. Now, he has to play with better pad level, and that's where I'll be looking for improvement this season. His upside is tremendous, and he has a big-time test this week versus Pitt, as he'll probably draw the Panthers' top offensive lineman in Adam Bisnawadi, who's an All-American and an NFL prospect as well. Darius Victor of Towson at 5'9", 210 pounds is what you would classify as short, not small. The compact runner has great burst and is powerful enough to break through arm tackles with ease. What you'll see in this game versus South Florida is that he's a volume carry guy that gets stronger with each and every carry. Now, where you want to see him grow his game is in the passing game, and that's both as a receiver and also as a blocker. Big time test for him this week as he faces a South Florida team that was very strong versus the run last year and returned 7 starters on that side of the ball. Stetson's Donald Payne is one of the more highly touted FCS prospects in the country. He's a classic strong safety that has good ball skills and blitzing ability. So versus the run, he'll definitely pop up on film in this game versus Sacred Heart. Now, what scouts want to see from him this season is for him to expand his game in the coverage area. Can he play man coverage? Can he be patient in zone, both deep and short? That's what I'll be watching for this week. 2 Northern Iowa prospects and defensive lineman Carter Schultz and quarterback Aaron Bailey. And for Schultz, the 6'4", 270-pound defensive end is excellent on both ends of defense, more in particular in the passing game, but don't underestimate his ability as a run defender. He had 14 sacks last year, 2 even versus Iowa State, so he does everything quite well and reminds me a lot of Kyle Emanuel when he came out of North Dakota State, who now plays for the San Diego Chargers, and how disciplined he is and what he does. Now, what I would be interested in seeing from him this year is if they are in this game is if they can move him around to different spots to showcase his athleticism and his versatility. Aaron Bailey is an interesting case. He's a phenomenal runner, going over 1,300 yards last year for the Panthers. And what everyone will be watching for this season is his growth as a passer from a placement and accuracy standpoint. Right now, like I've said before, he's similar to what Cordell Stewart was at Colorado. So if Bailey can showcase improvement there in this game, I think it goes a long way in changing perceptions in the scouting community. And finally, the premier offensive line prospect in the FCS this year, Julian Davenport of Bucknell. They face Marist this weekend. Davenport is good in the running game, very good athlete, former high school basketball player whose footwork shows itself on film in the pass protection department. Why he's one to watch this week? Well, Marist isn't big up front, but they do have a lot of speed and quickness. So how he's able to read, recover, and redirect versus speed is going to be the key trait to keep an eye on in this one. We'll take a quick break and be back after this.
The unique thing about the FCS is if it puts you in a position where if you win, you can keep playing. That it's competitive, it is Division I football, and it's also been able to cross conferences. I think within our league we play alongside the Ivy League, alongside the CAA, alongside the NEC, and it really gives you an opportunity each and every Saturday to prove yourself. The other thing is that these schools within this league are putting people out that are student athletes, that they'll achieve one of the better educations in the country, biased here at Bucknell. But we're also in a position where we can participate and play against some of the FBS schools. Last year we played against Army, and a couple years we played against Temple. To be able to judge yourself in terms of what you've done with your program, what you've done with your team against those teams that are, the more preeminent teams in the country. And that I think we all have to realize that a football field, when it comes down to it, it's 53.3 yards wide and 120 yards long. Regardless of where you're playing, that's the field. And that's what's exciting about college football, that when you get out there on a Saturday, and I keep telling my team, and I've always said this to my teams, there might be yelling, all right? Regardless of who they're yelling for, make sure that you know they're yelling for you.
And welcome back to the FCS Kickoff. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and it's time to preview some games, and we'll get started with the MEAC SWAC Challenge as we go coast to coast in our FCS wraparound. Great one to open up the season in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, as I think we're in for an exciting game. We can see these two teams later on in December in the Celebration Bowl. Both teams have talented quarterbacks in Alcorn's Lenora's Footman and Bethune-Cookman's Larry Brim. I'm a big fan of the balance of the Wildcats and the matchups they create on the perimeter with Joel Davis and Frank Brown. I think they'll be able to take advantage of a Brave secondary that's replacing some big-time playmakers on the back end. I like Bethune-Cookman. In the first State Cup matchup, Delaware State travels up Route 1 to face the Blue Hens of Delaware, and this is a tough matchup for the Hornets, who I think will be vastly underrated defensively, and we don't know what we'll get from the other side of the ball. That's the biggest question heading into this game. For Delaware, we know what we're getting: a four-headed rushing attack and a defense led by linebacker Charles Bell. They'll do a great job forcing a bunch of 3-and-outs. I like Delaware. This is a great matchup between North Dakota and Stony Brook, and you're looking at two very similar football squads, and both teams have the best defensive line in their conference, along with tremendous talent in the backfield. Now, where they differ is at quarterback. The Fighting Hawks' Keaton Studsbrett completed 60% of his passes last season and really helps balance out their offense. This one smells like an overtime type matchup, but I like North Dakota to go into Long Island and come away victorious. Huge SoCon matchup between the Citadel and Mercer. As you've seen in this preview, I have both teams making the playoffs, but this could be one of those tiebreaker type games that we revisit later in the season. Both teams excel on the ground, and both teams are also apt to stop in the run. Now, the Citadel's defense has two All-Americans in linebacker Joe Crochet and defensive back D. Delaney, who does a great job in picking off passes. Now, Mercer's John Russ is a 4-year starter at quarterback that's efficient with the football. These two teams match up very well. The last two meetings came down to a failed 2-point conversion. I think Mercer finally breaks through and knock off the Bulldogs in yet another close ball game. Another game in week 1 that we could see later on in the year as Duquesne travels to Youngstown State. This game features two excellent defenders in Duquesne's linebacker Kristen Kuntz and Youngstown State defensive end Derek Rivers. Strength versus strength battle, as the Duke's offensive line is talented and a veteran group, and Youngstown State does a great job in applying pressure. I foresee a tight game early on, with the Penguins slowly pulling away in the second half. I think their secondary, led by Leroy Alexander, will do a great job in smothering the Duke's passing attack. Two young football teams from last year that look to show improvement as Lafayette travels to Central Connecticut State, and you're going to get great linebacker play in this one with Lafayette's Brandon Bryant and Central Connecticut State's Randall Legary. The Leopards hope they get better play at quarterback, as they have really good talent on the perimeter, while Central Connecticut State hopes for the same, as the quarterback position tossed 12 interceptions to only 9 touchdowns. I think both offenses will have issues moving the football, but the Blue Devils defense, led by safety Najee Brown, and their special teams unit will be able to push them over the finish line. Wofford travels to Tennessee Tech to take on the Golden Eagles. Head coach Mike Ayers' Terriers are always a tough out because of their triple option attack and their ability to create turnovers. New head coach Marcus Satterfield is hoping his pro-style offensive attack helps improve a passing game that finished 6th in the Ohio Valley Conference. Now, this game comes down to simply, can the Golden Eagles get off the field on third down? I don't think they can do so on a consistent basis. I like the fullback Lorenzo Long running behind that offensive line led by Anton Warby. Early and often, I'm picking the Terriers. Intriguing game here between St. Francis and Montana. The Red Flash looks to be one of the stronger teams in the NEC, especially along the offensive line and in the special teams department. They do have the ability to match up on the perimeter with defensive back Lorenzo Jerome leading the secondary, but can they match up in the trenches versus the Grizzlies' ground game, which will be a big-time complement to their passing attack? Both running backs John Wynn and Trayshawn Favors are slashers with tremendous bursts. I do think Montana provides a little bit more unfavorable matchups within the box for St. Francis, so look for the Grizzlies to come away with the W. Another great Week 1 matchup between Monmouth and Lehigh. The Hawks foundation is built inside out. They're strong in the trenches on both sides of the ball and solid on the perimeter. Now, the Mountain Hawks are built outside in. Great perimeter talent and solid up front on both sides. Now, both quarterbacks in this game can hurt you with their arms and their legs. They can also hurt themselves with costly mistakes. I think this one will ultimately come down to the ball control, who can control the football and who can get off the field on third down. With that said, I like Monmouth in a very tight but highly entertaining contest. The two second-year programs in East Tennessee State and Kennesaw State open up the season once again. For East Tennessee State, the hope is that the result will be a lot different. In order for that to happen, the Bucks have to help their defense out by sustaining drives offensively. Kennesaw State's spread option attack does put a lot of pressure on you and put you at a disadvantage, and senior quarterback Trey White makes great decisions with the football in this attack, which was a big reason for the Owls' 6-5 inaugural season. Look for them to kick off the 2016 season the same way with a win over East Tennessee State. The 18th annual John Merritt Classic between Tennessee State and Arkansas Pine Bluff, and Pine Bluff has two premier talents in wide receiver Willie Young and linebacker Willie Duncan. The hope is that their leadership can galvanize the players around them to help the Lions escape the SWAC cellar, and Tennessee State is coming off a down season in which they suffered some injuries on both sides of the ball, but this year they look very strong in the secondary and along the offensive line. The Ezra Robinson-Willie Young matchup should be a great one to watch. I like Tennessee State to win this ball game. Keep an eye on quarterback O'Shea Ackerman-Carter, as he'll have a big day in the passing game. Pivotal game in Week 1 in the SWAC as the Labor Day Classic pits Texas Southern against Prairie View A&M in Prairie View's brand new stadium. In a game of debuts, we get the debut of Texas Southern's new head coach Mike Haywood, who's bringing his pro-style offense to Houston, and he has a great weapon in Derek Griffin to throw the football to. Now, Prairie View enters this season with something to prove after feeling like they were snubbed last year by the FCS playoff committee. They're strong up front defensively and still have more than enough firepower on offense. Texas Southern, in my opinion, is a year away, but they'll be game, but I like the Panthers. Now it's time to take a look at some upset alerts for Week 1, starting in Syracuse as they play host to Colgate, and we've talked about the historical reference in this game already, and as a result, it'll be a great watch on television. Both Cuse's Dino Babers and Colgate's Dan Hunt are well-respected coaches that will have their squads ready to play. The reason why it's an upset alert game is because of how Syracuse plays offense and how Colgate plays defense. The Orange will be an up-tempo spread offensive attack, which plays directly into the hands of what Colgate's defense does very well. They're very athletic, and they can both cover and get after the quarterback. I think in the second half, you'll start to see Syracuse lean more toward their ground game and avoid the upset in a close one versus the Patriot League's Raiders. Eastern Washington and Washington State makes our upset alert list because we expect a shootout between two high-powered offensive attacks that'll feature great quarterback and wide receiver play. For the Eagles, quarterback Jordan West and wide receivers Cooper Kupp and Kendrick Bourne will have success versus that Cougars defense. And for Wazoo, quarterback Luke Falk and wide receivers Gabe Marks and River Craycraft should also have big days versus the Eagles. It will ultimately come down to trench warfare, in my opinion. The Cougars' offensive line will have to deal with the Eagles' pro prospects, defensive end Samson Ebukam and defensive tackle Matthew Sommer, while Eastern Washington's offensive line is a big-time question mark heading into the season. In the end, the Eagles will have trouble keeping West clean on a consistent basis, and Wazoo will be able to pull away late. This game between Towson and South Florida ends up on our upset alert list because they are two eerily similar teams. Looking at two outstanding tailbacks in this game in Towson's Darius Victor and South Florida's Marlon Mack. Both teams are extremely tough in the trenches on both sides, and both teams made significant additions to the quarterback room. Towson brings in Morgan Mihalik, a transfer from Oregon, and South Florida adds former NFL quarterback Sean King as quarterback coach to help develop the improving Quentin Flowers. Both additions will help. I just think in this game, Mihalik will help them a little bit more on the field. I like Towson in the upset. Next up, we have Fordham at Navy. This is a tricky game, which is why it ended up on our upset alert list. Navy loses 10 starters on offense, while Fordham returns 10 on that side of the ball from an offense that averaged 38 points a game. The Navy number is misleading because they've played a lot of guys last season. So yes, the starters are gone, but they are still very experienced. So two major questions for this one are how seamlessly can new Navy starting quarterback Tago Smith take over for the outstanding Keenan Reynolds, and how can the Rams defense win, or if they can win, on third down. Fordham upset Army last year in the opener 37-35, and I don't think we'll see that many points in this one. Navy is a much better defensive football team, and I give them the nod as they avoid the upset. William & Mary travels to North Carolina State, and the Tribe are one of the more well-balanced teams in the FCS and can beat you multiple ways. NC State, in my opinion, is very good on both sides of the line of scrimmage and have one of the best all-purpose players in the country in Jalen Samuels. Perimeter play will be big in this one. The Wolfpack are breaking in a new quarterback, while the Tribe have all three of their battery returning, quarterback, tight end, and wide receivers. These two teams are built the same way, and I think it will come down to the passing game. And right now, I think the Tribe have the edge in that category, or has the edge in that category. I think they go to Riley and upset the Wolfpack. The front seven of the Tribe will surprise many as they play a huge role in the upset. Southern Illinois travels to Florida Atlantic, and the Salukis named transfer quarterback Josh Strawn the starter. He's an outstanding talent that should continue to keep the Salukis' passing game potent. Now, FAU's offense isn't so lucky. However, they do have an opportunity to improve that this year behind a veteran offensive line. And defensively, I think they arguably have the best defensive line in Conference USA, led by football Gameplan All-American Trey Hendrickson. That's the matchup they'll win, which will ultimately win them the game. If you love defense, you'll love this game between Maine and UConn, as both teams boast strong front sevens and solid play on the back end. So expect a low-scoring game, which is ripe for an upset. The question is, can Maine quarterbacks Drew Belcher or Dan Collins bring balance to their offensive attack? UConn has the same question about their quarterback Brian Sheriffs as they enter the season. I think the Huskies tailback Arkil Newsome and linebacker Junior Joseph will help the Huskies grind out a hard-fought victory over the Black Bears. In a rematch from last year, the Panthers coming to Ames looking for revenge after last year's 31-7 loss to the Cyclones. And I think the biggest difference this time around could be the Panthers' passing game. If they're able to be balanced offensively, they have more than enough talent to win this matchup. On the flip side, I like the potential of the Cyclones this season. Big fan of running back Mike Warren and wide receiver Alan Lazard. They have a veteran group defensively as well, and I think Iowa State has a chance to go bowling this season, and that road starts by avoiding the upset to Northern Iowa. Intriguing matchup here between Alabama State and Texas San Antonio. New head coach for the Roadrunners, Frank Wilson, adds a dynamic talent at quarterback in Jarrett Johnson, who transfers over from Sam Houston State. Now, while the Hornets, who went 6-5 last year without spring practices in head coach Brian Jenkins' first season, they themselves return a bunch of starters and are deep on both sides of the ball and will be very strong defensively throughout the course of the FCS season. The biggest matchup in this ball game will be in the passing game. I can trust Texas San Antonio's receivers over Alabama State's defensive backs, and Jarrett Johnson more so than Alabama State's quarterback. I like UT San Antonio to win this one in a very tight, contested, and well-played ball game. And finally, a great matchup between two top academic institutions in this country as Richmond takes on Virginia. On the gridiron, this has the potential for an entertaining game. Both teams boast a lot of talent on the perimeter, which when you look at the line of scrimmage, that's where you can see why we have this game on our upset alert list. The Spiders are really good along the offensive line and questionable along the defensive front. The same can be said for the Virginia Cavaliers. Look for a high-scoring game that'll come down to quarterback play, and that's where, in my opinion, Richmond has the advantage. I think Kyle Loletta will have success throwing the football to wide receiver Brian Brown, while defensively, defensive back David Jones, who can play anywhere on the back end, will become a household name after this one. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts and check out the FCS Opening Drive podcast on iTunes.